Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet. Tonight I have a special guest with me. I have Paul Gorefiend of Embalmer. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Happy to be here, Jet. Thanks for having me.
So, Paul, tell us a little bit about, the early days of Embalmer. Now, I know you didn't join till later on, but like you said, you've known them forever. You've gone to all their shows. So, tell us a little bit about some of the early history. I mean, how they started out as Corpse Grinder and changed the name and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, sure. Well, basically, Embalmer was formed by Roy Stewart, who's still in the band playing drums right now, Mark Davis on guitar, and Toby Wolf on bass. And those guys were jamming around and formed a band called Corpse Grinder. They played a couple of shows, I forget if it's one or two, back in the late 80s, around 1989. I know they opened for Sacrifice from Canada. But also around that time, it wasn't the internet, so you didn't really become aware of other bands unless you got a flyer or saw them in a zine or something of that nature. So they became aware there was another band from Maryland called Corpse Grinder that George Fisher, incidentally, used to sing for, where he got his original name from. And they decided to change the name to Embalmer. Plus, they liked the name Embalmer better. And one-word names were actually available back then, unlike 3-4 names I think we're up to now, right? So, but anyway.
Now, also back then too. I mean, how did you guys get your demos and shit like that out? I mean, were they just swapping tapes? Oh my God.
Yeah, Embalmer was big in the tape trading scene back then, and after they first changed the name over to Embalmer, shortly thereafter they added a guy named Dwayne Morris into the band, who later was in Incantation and Nunslaughter and a bunch of other bands. But anyway, that was his second band that he had been in after being in Mutilation before that, a local Cleveland band. And he was heavy into the underground tape trading scene since the 80s. So basically, the Into the Oven demo was recorded in 1991, shortly before he joined. His picture is on the demo, but he didn't play on that, actually. That was recorded as the three-piece of Mark, Roy, and Toby. And after Dwayne got in the band, they just started trading the tape everywhere, all over the world. A lot of Swedish contacts, European, Australian, and the name started to spread, which led to Relapse Records taking notice of the band later on in 1993, and they got signed to there for a 7-inch deal and took it from there. So.
Now, prior to the little hiatus in '97, what were some of the clubs that were there that Embalmer was playing? Were they playing a lot of local stuff, or were they going out and about? What was going on with them as far as that?
From early on, mostly as a result of the heavy connections within the underground through the mail network that used to exist, Embalmer got a pretty good regional following, and they were trying to do something a little more unique from the average thing. The vocal style they were using, a mixture of real fast terrorizer grinds, one of the first bands to really play in that style around this area. Mixed in with the Autopsy influences that they had and Black Sabbath and all the doomy type stuff that's become a part of the sound as well. So throughout those connections, they played a bunch of premier local shows. I mean, it was a lot bigger of a deal to open for major touring bands back then because it was limited slots. So one of the earliest tours in Cleveland that was a pretty big name tour that came through was the Morbid Angel Entombed and Unleashed tour, and they ended up opening that in '91. And then throughout '92, they played some good out-of-state fests. The classic Rhode Island Death Fest, 1992, with Impetigo headlining, Incantation, Rock Trevor, a bunch of other old-school sick bands. Pittsburgh Mini Death Fest, which basically was an extension of the Grave and Massacre tour at that time that was going around, but they turned it into kind of like a mini festival in Pittsburgh, which included Baphomet, Bathim, Mythic, and a bunch of other sick bands from that area. And, basically the bottom line is they started playing a bunch of good out-of-state shows and the best premier local shows, as well as throwing their own musician night gigs with other bands that were developing at that time. I mean, that was a really cool thing. There was a club here, Flashes, that really became the home of the band during those early formative years. Really opened their doors to a lot of the local talent here. And some of these musicians' night, for example, Embalmer would host the musicians' night, and then it would turn into a show. And there'd be tons of people. I mean, a few hundred people would show up at these things, and the scene was really just amped up, growing and developing at that time. And Embalmer was very much a part of that. Amongst a lot of other good bands in the Cleveland scene around then. Another good club was the Empire that used to exist. And our friend Brian Sekula from Terror, another great Cleveland band, was the sound guy there and was pretty easy to get gigs at that time. And, you know, he did his other jobs going out on tour as a traveling sound guy with Incantation and Pungent Stench and Brutal Truth back in the day. And, you know, always was heavy involved in the underground as well. So, you know, Embalmer always kept good relations with people in the scene, and you know, worked hard and continue to do that to this day. So
did you go to a lot of those shows?
Yeah, I was at a lot of them for the tail end of that period, and got to see some great lineups. Toby, incidentally, is my coworker now, and we talk about those old shows. And I'll catch him in the hallway in the coffee line, incidentally over at the Starbucks kiosk. And, you know, he'll come walking by and playing air guitar like, vroom, doing the vocal and stuff. It's like, yeah, man, just sit at lunch and cheese out on old times. So,
and all the people around you are like, look at those two weird old men over there.
Yeah, yep, you know, and we both work in the federal government, too, so we're at a federal job, and we're sitting there, you know, singing old Black Sabbath and talking about Morbid Angel and stuff, so it's pretty wild.
So what happened, you know, when that caused them to go on that hiatus that they went on for a couple years there?
Well, basically, fast forward throughout the Relapse period, basically 1993, they signed to Relapse Records and then released the Blood Everywhere 7-inch. And after that, in 97, Relapse ended up putting out a bunch of releases on what they had at the time called the Underground series. So, for example, Mortician, House by the Cemetery was one, which was originally a 7-inch, and then they added some other material to that. Disembowelment was another one. So, Embalmer was one band that came out in that series that basically never put out a full-length release for Relapse, but they basically took the 7-inch and combined it with the 1993 Rotting Remains demo, and that became what would be the Blood Everywhere CD that probably people know the best out of all the material. A lot of people actually think, like I say, it's the first full-length album, but it's actually a compilation of two different recordings. So what caused that hiatus was the band was just, you know, motivation was lacking at that time. Rick, the singer that was with them, kind of got involved in some other music. He got more into like the Marilyn Manson and KMFDM and all that kind of a scene, and started kind of departing from the death metal side of things. On top of that, Roy and Mark, they had families at the time, and the band couldn't really get out. Aside from fest appearances and some regional shows, they never really got the chance to get out and go on a major tour with anybody in support, despite being on Relapse and all of that at the time. So with all that going on, their last show was Ohio Death Fest in 1998, which incidentally I was involved with. I helped my friend Brian Baxter promote that through Ablated Records, and that ended up being Embalmer's last show. And Rick wasn't even singing at that show, to be honest with you. He was standing in the crowd right next to me and Jim Kanya, and we were watching another fill-in singer up there, Frank Wall. So it just wasn't the same. The motivation wasn't there. The feel wasn't there, and it was time to just take a break.
And okay, so then you guys, or they took this break. So what was it that all of a sudden they were like, hey, we got to start this shit back up again?
I think it was just timing. Roy and Mark's children, you know, were at a more grown age. They had a little more freedom to do stuff. The fire was there, and to be honest, I know them guys all missed it. That's the bottom line. The fire was still there inside, and even though it died down a little towards the end of that latter part of the 90s, the spark was starting to grow again. So around 2004, they started talking about getting the band back together, and the plan was to get the Blood Everywhere lineup back together, being Rick, Roy, Mark Davis, Jocko German, and Dave Phillips, who played bass. That all got accomplished, except for Dave Phillips wasn't able to do it, so they recruited Rob Lesniak, and with that, they started getting involved and writing music and jamming around and seeing where it would go. And their first show back was a return show in Cleveland in 2005 around Halloween, and it ended up being a good success, and the band got a little extra charge after the good crowd response. And from there, I actually booked the band for their first New York City appearance at a club called Downtime New York, and that was pretty much almost sold out. And then they followed that up with a Maryland Death Fest appearance in 2006, and then and just started gaining momentum from there, basically.
And also during that time, you guys released your only full-length album, Faces of Death.
Yeah, 13 Faces of Death, yeah. Not that it matters to me, but hey.
The mediocre album that everybody got excited. I mean, what do you think? I mean, was it just lack of enthusiasm? Why did this just not get the reception that, Well, it was really kind of hyped up a little bit, and then when it came out, there was a lot of disappointments, but for me, I mean, I know that there was a million fucking things going on with that band, a zillion different lineup changes. I couldn't even understand how they could write anything with all these lineup changes and stuff going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to be honest, and I'm not going to sling a whole lot of mud or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that whole release was pretty much the brainchild and baby of the ex-vocalist Rick Fleming, all right? Now, that whole thing came together, and really what shaped the sound of that record was a convergence of forces, all right? Rob Lesniak took on a lot of the writing responsibility, and, just to back up a minute, you got to remember that when the band first reformed, the plan was to have Mark Davis, the original guitar player, Roy Stewart, the original drummer, and, as the main writing body of the band. Mm-hmm. But after Mark wasn't able to jam with the band anymore, for various reasons in his family life again, Rob took on a lot of that responsibility, and he was a little younger at that time, and getting, even though he had always been involved in the death metal scene, he was getting real turned on to the super underground stuff, and the super ultra classic demo recordings and things of that nature, and getting more well-rounded as a music fan and as a writer. So he was going through a transitional period at that point there, with his writing, and it was a tremendous responsibility to fill Mark's shoes to begin with. So then Don, who we have in the band now, he was a member during that point and had come on, and including the reemergence of Dwayne Morris joining on guitar. Rob played bass, remember? And that album kind of came together, and it was rushed somewhat. Mm-hmm. Rick was really into numerology and all kinds of weird stuff, and he was insistent that this album come out on Friday, October 13th, 2006. So, I mean, against my better judgment, because I was giving them a lot of advice at that time, and without consulting really the rest of the band, Rick took a walk after their Maryland Death Fest performance in 2006 with Pathos Productions and John Dwyer, and basically worked out a verbal agreement with them without even really showcasing the band to any of the labels that were in attendance, pretty much the biggest metal fest in America at that point. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a big mistake, and it made me cringe. And they basically took the band from a level of, hey, this is a classic death metal early 90s band that was on Relapse, this and that people love, and you not to say anything bad about Pathos, but it's a more underground type of a label. It's less distribution, less visibility, and the product wasn't there at the end of the day. I mean, so basically everything got rushed. Rick wanted to have his hands in the whole thing, managed the whole production of the record, down to the mix and everything, and basically it just didn't really live up to standards. I mean, material-wise could have been better. There's a couple standout songs, and the production of it is, man, it's not raw production in a good way. Let's just put it there.
So how did you get in the band then, Paul?
All right, so fast forwarded up to 2012, and basically Rick's not working out in the band. There was always a lot of public drama with for a little period of time with the label. There ended up being a disagreement with Pathos. It was all public, and it was just a PR nightmare. You know what I mean? And just a general guy that's really not very easy to get along with, just to put it mildly and not say anything real bad, you know? So with that being said, he always had a little bit of a sense that the band couldn't continue without his vocals, that he was the center of the band and all of this kind of stuff, which Brian definitely disagreed with. Had heard me do vocals just messing around at practice before and stuff, and he was my roommate and said, "Hey man, we got a couple shows booked, Paul, you know, you should come down and do some vocals and see how it works out." So I thought about it for a day or two, and you know, next thing you know, I went down to a practice. Roy liked what he heard. The band liked what they heard. I liked what I heard, and basically we started working on getting a set list down that we could manage and get through these couple of shows, where my intention was to judge the crowd response and just see if everybody else was digging it before I really made a decision to permanently join the band. You know, the initial plan was just to join, to get them through the gigs, and then kind of reassess at that point whether I was going to take a more active role and permanently join the band, and that's in fact exactly what I ended up doing. So
I guess crowd reaction was pretty good then.
yeah, you know, and like I say, I didn't need to be an Embalmer, you know, for any kind of a name or a status or anything like that. I mean, I'm just a humble underground fan type dude, and I know a lot of people just by virtue of, you know, even without being in a band for over 20 years, I've been traveling out of state, you know. It's not a surprise to see me in New York City or Chicago or Massachusetts or Texas or California. I mean, so it's just, that's the beauty of metal. You meet people over a period of time in all kinds of different places, and you know, I'm drawn to the music and attend fests. So with that being said, you know, I didn't join Embalmer just to say, hey, I'm Paul from Embalmer. You know, I wanted to, as an old fan, do a part in continuing what I thought was very, you know, a legendary Cleveland band, you know, and do a part to help carry that through. I liked the material that Brian was writing. They got back to the old style of, you know, real sick, chaotic writing that I love from the Blood Everywhere era. And Brian really spent a lot of time on the riffs to make sure they were right. So, you know, I believed in the material in its raw form without vocals, and then getting the validation, being a vocalist and going out and putting something out there that people seem to enjoy and not say, oh, where's the other guy, this and that. You know, I got down to it and started writing lyrics and putting the album together.
But as soon as you got in there, Paul, didn't you, like, start doing stuff right away? I mean, weren't there shows already lined up and all kinds of things going on? Wasn't it kind of fast for you there for a while?
Well, yeah, and you know, it's one of those things, like I said, I've always been real active in the underground, whether it's, you know, trading or doing mail or supporting distros or traveling for fests, all that kind of stuff. And at that time, I had Gorefiend Promotions going on, and I was basically a show promoter over here in Cleveland, and I was, you know, bringing a lot of bands in and doing gigs. So throughout that, I had a lot of regional promotional connections that I put to use for the band, and plus personal friendships. So as soon as people heard I was in the band and that people were digging it, then all of a sudden, you know, it just kind of fell into place. You know, my friend Ed Farshty from New York, you know, wanted to bring us out there. You know, Boris out in Chicago wanted to get us involved. So, I mean, people just started hitting us up with show offers, and then wherever we weren't getting offers, I reached out to the people, you know, that I knew were the go-to people to book in those scenes. And, you know, it's just a natural thing that I was already doing anyway. It was just now I was doing it for something that I was involved with personally.
So, okay, here we are. 2016. You guys are about to release your second full-length album, Emanations from the Crypt. Oh gosh, that's always a hard word for me to say. So what were you guys trying to achieve when recording this album?
Well, real simple. We wanted to get Embalmer back to the form that people expected in the 90s and the level of sickness that really I expected as a fan of the band my whole life. Brian was a lifelong fan of the band as well, and he had plenty of musical experience through jamming with Sodomized and Regurgitation, and did a short stint in Gorgasm in 2002 as well. So, and Necrotic Disgorgement, can't forget that. But with that being said, he was also very active in the underground for over 25 years, and he did Ablated Records, Ohio Death Fests, and really had a grasp on not just what the Embalmer sound should be, but just a wide spectrum of underground death metal influence and playing experience, basically. So he really, I can attest to the amount of time he spent writing a lot of the riffs on this record. He was my roommate, like I said, and I heard most of the stuff from the time that the first note was crafted. And he'd always be coming out, even before I was in the band. Hey, bro, what do you think about this riff, man? What do you think about this this pattern, man? I got to run it through the fine-tooth comb, bro, you know? So it was a lot of attention paid to how it actually came across. And we took basically the elements of the older Embalmer style with the chaotic grinding chords and the blasts and the doomy influences, and added up some more elements from the brutal death metal realm as far as riffing goes. And Brian was heavily influenced by Deranged from Sweden, the Rated X record, and all that's one of both of our favorite records. So you hear a lot of trilled, hammer-on, speed-picked riffs on there, and the whole goal of it was just to keep the intensity up. We wanted to have a brutal, pissed-off, sick record, you know, not reinventing the wheel. But on the same token, we didn't want to do a retro record, but we didn't want to depart from the sound that people originally liked about the band. So there's two audiences we were really going after with this record. And number one is getting back respect from some of the old fans that, you know, like you said, were disappointed with the 13 Faces of Death record, and understandably so. We only play one song off that live still, and, you know, the band kind of acknowledges that now. And the second thing that we have to realize is a whole new generation has come and gone, you know? There's people going to shows now that were born in like 91, 92, 95, 97, you know? And the name Embalmer doesn't ring to them the same. They didn't come through the Relapse stuff or be aware that they had a 7-inch and a CD, or, you know, haven't heard about it in the news feed maybe as much and stuff like that. So we want to put out a respectable album for the older fans, but also not a stale record that's so rooted in the past that it doesn't apply to today. So, you know, that was kind of the approach we took with it.
And I think you pretty much achieved it, because listening to it now, first of all, reading all about how you guys recorded it, you know, no triggers. I like that because it makes it more of like a pure old school death metal sound to it. But you got that kind of little grindy business going on in there too, which I think appeals to like the newer audience of Embalmer as well. So I think the way you guys kind of combine all that together, you kind of, like you said, you put out something respectable that the old Embalmer fans really like, because it does have that great old school sound, but it's a little bit faster. It's got those little grindy elements that I think a lot of the newer fans like too. And it's different than a lot of the stuff that's coming out today too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely know what you're saying, and you know, I'm one of these people that's watched the whole death metal scene evolve over the years, you know, at a very intimate level, and it's, you know, and I agree with you. I think that what made metal interesting throughout the early part of the 90s and through the 80s even and all that, and the early 2000s, was there was room to get faster, to get heavier, to get more extreme, you know, but now we've reached the point where people are playing, you know, 400 beats a minute on drums, and there's all these, you know, crazy punch-ins and punch-outs in the studio where you can just do things measure by measure and just piece songs together. And I think a lot of feel is lost in that type of recording. And that's not to say that I don't like technical death metal. There's some technical death metal that I get into, you know. But I think that the main thing is you got to have memorable riffs in a song, and sometimes it's so fast that, you know, there's nothing that's memorable about it. So the scene has come and gone. It's reached this level of, you know, extremity as far as on a pure speed basis, and it's, you know, bands have gotten faster, they've gotten doomier, they've gotten more gory, they've gotten more satanic, more sick. So where do you go here? You start mixing styles, you know, and you know, I think that you're right. There is a niche there of bands that still try to do it the old way and just stick to untriggered drums and a more organic sound overall. I guess you would say, and that appeals to me because I think it's more warm, it's more honest sounding, and even if it's got a glitch here or there, there's something that sounds not imperfect and it wasn't recorded with a metronome. That's what gives it its life to me, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Now is Roy really playing on the same kit that he's played for the past 20 years?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he bought that kit in 1988, and he still got it. He just changes the heads and keeps it, up and up and maintained well.
What is it? Do you know what it is?
Yeah, it's a Tama. I'm not sure what model of Tama it is, but it's a 9-piece kit. He likes to play with the double pedal, though, so he usually keeps his one bass drum at home, and then, he has a stand for his other 2 rack toms. So. But yeah, that's the original kit.
I read that. I'm like, for real? Who does that anymore? That's kind of cool. And it sounds great still, So what the hell? If it's not broke, why fix it, I guess,
Yeah, we're still waiting on that big endorsement. You know what I mean?
Hey,
so
it might just happen. So Paul, what are the subject matters on this one? What does the album deal with lyrically?
Well, I think making a straight gore album would have been a little redundant, but on the same token, there's a lot of gore elements that would need to be present and expected to be present on an Embalmer release for older fans and what the subject matter always has been, quite frankly. So what I took it basically is, kind of like a mixture of blood everywhere, straight out splatter gore, and then mix it with a little more of the creepy cemetery, embalmer, mortuary type elements that were the subject matter of, say, Into the Oven demo, caskets of carnage and aldehyde and just things of that nature. So what I tried to do is I tried to have plenty of sick gore subject matter in there, but with a little bit of a story, or maybe something about a deranged embalmer and abusing the corpses in the mortuary and stuff. Or and I guess the difference in my lyrics, the element that I add is I add a little bit of a darker element there too. So there's a lot of stuff that's a little evil as well as being sick. And just more depraved, mental insanity, things of that nature. Just chaotic type subject matter to go with the chaotic music, I guess is what you could say.
And how did you approach it vocally?
Well, vocally, I basically just tried to make a record that I would like to hear if I was an Embalmer fan. And that basically drew on the elements of the 2 previous singers that were in the band before me. And let's be honest, I mean, it's not like you join a band like Embalmer, whether you're on vocals, guitar, whatever member comes and goes out of the band. In a way, you are writing in a box because you are writing in an established style. You're not talking about a band that formed a year ago, 5 years ago. It's 26, 27 years ago now. So you come in and you try to do your best to carry on that legacy while not copying styles completely. You add your elements to it, but you incorporate everything that you can from the past. So other influences that I have, and I think the difference between my vocals and some of the others is some of my lows and my main vocal approach is heavily influenced by the classic 90s vocalists like Craig Pillard, Rob, from Incantation, Rob Molzan from Decrepit is another one. Jay Hendershaw from Scattered Remnants up in your neck of the woods.
Yep.
And Will Romer, people like that. So I'm more of a fan of the low, throaty vocal style as my main vocal. But of course, anybody that listens to Embalmer wants to hear the tortured screams and the highs and the varied elements and the gurgles and all that other kind of stuff that they grew up or became established listening to it.
And it really sounds great. And so let's talk a little bit about the cover art, too, because it's perfect. I mean, here, it just goes so well with the entire album. Old school looking, but not too retro. So did you put forth an idea to the artist, and who was the artist? How does that all go about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had a lot of fun with coming up with the concept with that cover artwork, and it was a total pleasure to work with Chris Moyen. That was done by legendary French artist Chris Moyen, who did a whole bunch of killer records in the 90s and continues to do great records. I mean, look him up on Thorncross Designs and just look through page after page after page of just cult classic recordings that I just grew up loving. And I'm a big shirt collector too, and I have tons of old ink can shirts and other bands where he did the artwork, and I loved all of his style, especially his black and white. So when I went on and browsed his site on Thorncross, I saw a lot of the color work that he was doing and how he had recolored a lot of the old classic black and white designs that he did, and I said, man, this is a dream come true. I get, to have I'm in a band that I was a lifelong fan in, and now I'm commissioning artwork from one of my favorite artists that I've ever had, come across the scene. So, that was a real honor, really, for me to have Chris Moyen agree to do our cover for us, and the concept that we were both able to collaborate on. Super easy to work with, sent me sketches back and forth. It was very easy to approve as he inked it. Just super cool dude, man. So that's always cool, someone that you've always respected your entire life as a fan, and then you work with them on a professional level, and they're just super easy to go in, no ego, totally cool, man. And totally cool.
And it's perfect. And hey, and now you can have a shirt with that art on it too.
yeah. Hell's Headbangers actually has those available on their website right now. They put them available for the public ahead of the CD and the album, which comes out April 1st, of course. So,
and Paul, how is the album going to be released? In what formats?
Basically, all formats. We're doing it on CD with a 16-page booklet with full lyrics, pictures, RIP, additional artwork, some by Mark Riddick. Just a total. We try to give everybody the total package. It's also going to come out on expanded cassette. And gatefold LP, and on top of that, the coolest thing that's basically going to be done for the release is the Die Hard edition. Hell's Headbangers likes to do Die Hard editions for bands, so that's kind of what drew us to them to begin with, was the creative packaging options that were available through them that weren't available through other labels, plus the fact that their distribution is just blown completely up in North America and the world, and the stature as a label. So with that being said, the two best formats and the most limited formats in the Die Hard edition are what we call the Coroner's Report edition. And this is crazy, man. The first 111 picture disc version and the first 100 CDs both come in basically a box that fits a CD or fits an LP. And inside there we have 3 evidence bags. Basically, we took a forensic approach with this. The whole package is sealed with evidence tape on the outside. So basically, for the LP version, you'll have the 3 picture discs in the bottom, a roll of bubble wrap. Then you'll have 3 individually labeled evidence bags with different items: bloody frayed piece of rope, bloody pocket knives, vial of embalming fluid, meat cleaver, and these are all individual evidence bags that are placed in there on top of the LPs. And then there's going to be some foam on top of that, and then the box closes on top. It's actually a printed box with the album cover on alternate artwork. It's not the actual cover, but the outside of the box is printed with the Mark Riddick artwork, and it's splattered in blood. The coolest thing about the Die Hard Coroner's Report edition is that they come with a personalized, hand-drawn or handwritten Cleveland Coroner's Report. So basically, we went and printed out actual Cleveland coroner's reports and autopsy forms like you would get down at the medical examiner's office. Roy signed all 211 of them as the medical examiner, and then I sat and hand wrote each one of them. So basically all the kills are different, and they even have the little sketch where you draw the wounds on, and I drew the corresponding wounds on the corpse and all that stuff. So basically how the numbers are how the records are numbered, is basically by case number. So the album is Hell's 166, so all of them are 166-001, 002, and then on through the series. And all the kills are different. So if you have number 002, the kill is going to be different than number 076, and so on and so forth. So, the victim line is left blank on the form too, and as they're packaged at Hell's Headbangers and they get orders, right before it's stuck in the packing box or the envelope, the person who orders its name goes on the victim line. So if John Smith orders the new Embalmer, they get a personalized John Smith autopsy report with a hand-drawn kill signed by Roy Stewart. So
that's cool. So you guys put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah, and that was really cool. It was the brainchild, basically, of me spending a lot of time on the phone with Eric Orville over at Hell's Headbangers, and those guys are willing to go all out. I mean, they actually bought like 211 pocket knives, 211 meat cleavers, a bunch of bullet shells, cases of razor blades. I mean, it's out of control, the amount of effort that those guys will put in to a release. I mean, it's just a no-brainer, especially the fact that they're so close to home that we would go with them.
How long did it take for you to put all this stuff together?
It just came, I don't know, it kind of started flowing out naturally in a brainstorming session, I guess. We were talking about what to do for the Die Hard edition. Eric called me up if I had any ideas. I thought, about the coroner's report idea, and basically then it moved on to, well, what can we include inside? Let's take a forensic approach about this. And I'm going to throw a little plug out to my bros out in Mortal Decay, because they kind of helped me get together with this idea unconsciously. I've always been a fan of their '98 record, Sickening Erotic Fanaticism. Mm-hmm. And one of the coolest things I thought that they did in that thing is when you opened up the CD booklet, each song had a icon basically of what the lyrical content was, and it was the police symbol. So like for grave robbery had a police symbol, sexual assault had a police symbol, and so all the songs were coded. So I was like, man, that kind of fits Embalmer too. So without ripping that off, I mean, what can we do that's more expanded and cool and kind of take a forensic approach with everything? So
that's kind of cool. Now people could order this now.
Yeah, I mean, it's up for pre-order now on Hell's Headbangers, and from what I understand, we're getting a good amount of pre-orders. The official street date is April 1st, but yeah, they are available for order in all formats on their website right now, hellsheadbangers.com.
And now those box things that you were talking about, those are limited editions, right?
Yeah, it's limited to 111 picture disc vinyls and 100 CD versions.
Wow, so those are probably going pretty fast too.
Yeah. Like I say, I know all formats are up. I'm not sure if those are up yet, I'll be honest with you. Because I think what they want to do is they want to get all the pieces together and then present it and then have it available so that people know it's coming, it's there, then get a chance to order it.
Now, do you guys are having a bunch of older stuff re-released too?
Yeah, actually we just had some older stuff re-released on cassette. I mean, tapes are all the rage these days again, right? And so basically our buddy Dylan from Headsplit Records out in Portland hit us up. And, he's a rabid fan too and a friend. So he's like, hey man, I want to do the early demos on 2-on-1 cassette. So we were totally game with that, and he did an interview with us in a previous issue of Headsplit, and we developed a relationship from there, and then we hung out and got all fucked up at the Hell's Head Bash last year, and got to know each other pretty good, and we really moved the idea forward. So that came out, 200 copies of the Into the Oven 1991 and the Taxidermist 1992. Demos, both were put 2-on-1 through him. Now, moving ahead, there's plans for Hell's Headbangers to put out the 91 material, 92 material on what could end up being a double or triple vinyl, actually.
Cool.
So there's a wealth of old material there, and like I said, I got good relations with all the ex-members of the band, except for the last singer. But other than that, all the old members are all close friends, and including Dwayne Morris, and he's one of these guys that saved everything from back in the day. So he's been a wealth and a super enormous help when it comes to compiling old materials, old flyers, pictures. I mean, some people just go through it. He's one of those guys that documented it, would always take pictures and kind of have everything now to go back and tell the story all over for us. So, with that being said, there's a wealth of material there. There's alternate recordings of the demos. There's whole entire live sets. My buddy Steve Eggs who was in Schnauzer and Zit Squatch, Pile of Eggs, bunch of bands, like more in the noise grind scene. He used to audio boot a ton of shows, so, I mean, there's probably 15, 25, knows how many tapes that I've seen personally of live shows back then. So we spent a lot of time. We're almost done with the process of going through all the material, picking out the best live stuff to put on an LP, possibly the alternate mix of the demo, and then plus plenty of liner notes, pictures, flyers, and internal content that just, makes it cool.
And by alternate mix, do you mean, what is it, just like remastered or something?
Well, it's more of a raw version. Like, basically, the way that the demo came out in 91 was, they went and recorded it at JMC, and there was a couple different versions of it. And then there's also talk, possibly, of having a bonus 7-inch to go with that package, too, because during that time, there was the 92 demo, just to explain, the Taxidermist demo was mostly a live demo that was recorded at the Cleveland Splatterfest 92, which had Deceased headline, Human Remains, Rotravor, Cyanide, a bunch of sick bands from back in the day. And that was basically put out by Dwayne because Dwayne hadn't played on the Into the Oven demo, so that was kind of like a representation of Embalmer that Dwayne was involved with. So during that time period, they had gone in the studio and cut some tracks, and one of the songs, Projectile Vomit, is on that demo, and that's the only studio track. But there's also a whole nother session of stuff that came out of that, and then an alternate mix of the first demo. So there's all kinds of lost studio recordings that never made it on any particular release that we think would be cool to put out a definitive package of that era of the band. So you capture everything from the formation up until 1992. And it's just a matter of, we're not going to throw crap on there and stuff that's just junk just to throw it on there. Right. So there's such a wealth of stuff. It's just a lot to go through.
So, Paul, where can people go to find out more about the band, where they could pick up your merchandise, what shows you're playing, that kind of thing? Would Facebook be the best spot?
Yeah, I guess Facebook would be a good spot. We're trying to get a website built, with a whole bunch of cool stuff to keep updated and everything. But for now, yeah, Facebook would probably be the best place. As far as merch, there's a couple places. Obviously, our label, Hell's Headbangers, has merchandise available for us. Our personal band merch page is www.embalmer.bigcartel.com. So, like a lot of underground bands, we operate a big cartel. And then we license the design out to Warlord clothing as well. So, I mean, if people want to order for Warlord, I think he has a design available in all formats as well. So,
all right. Well, I think we covered just about everything and then some. And I want to thank you for coming on the show to tell us what's going on. And like you said, the new album, Emanations from the Crypt, coming out April 1st on Hell's Headbangers?
Yep, Hell's Headbangers Records.
And again, thank you so much for coming on. I love the new album, and I'm assuming you guys are going to have a bunch of shows and stuff coming up.
Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for the interview and for the good words and feedback about the record. Right now, we're kind of planning our 2016, filling out the show schedule. We have some cool events already planned. We just came back from Buffalo, and we're going to. As far as fest appearances that we have confirmed, we're confirmed again for Hell's Head Bash this year, Labor Day weekend at the Cleveland Agora. We were just announced for Full Terror Assault at Cave in Rock, Illinois. Yeah. Their second edition of that this year. That'll be pretty cool as a U.S. open air. We got a Chicago appearance, another fest appearance, Death to False Metal, with playing with Funebrarum and Drawn and Quartered and Blaspherian and some other sick bands. And then, your usual regional gigs, and we have some other things that I can't announce yet that we're still in the works as far as we want to do a Tex-Mex tour this year. Instead of just doing Texas like we did before, we want to cross down into Mexico and do a couple dates.
Nice.
And then we want to get back out to the West Coast and do a little mini tour out there, and then get up back towards your area. So up in New England and all that. And so, I mean, it's all going to be a collection. Instead of like a full-on U.S. tour, I would call it more a collection of mini tours and fest appearances for this year.
All right, so then you're going to be all over the place this year, hopefully.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so again, I'm going to let you get going. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us tonight.
Thanks for having me again.